Okay, so we're about welcome everyone, and very nice to see you again for the Lorig class. So it's very important that we adjust our motivation, and Geshe says obviously always the motivation here is to benefit as much as possible. So when you come here into this class, it's, I mean, of course, you could have different aspirations. One thing would be, I really want to get the most benefit out of this Lorig class. Or even if you don't have this intense interest in Lorig, at least you should be thinking, you know, this is a new subject. I'm learning something new here. I'm always interested in learning something new, because every time we learn something new, we remove a portion of darkness, a portion of ignorance and confusion. So learning something new can only be of benefit to us. Like, you don't lose by coming into this class. There can only be benefit. So, of course, you could be thinking that I am here, I have joined this class, and hopefully this will help my education, right? My training, my study. Hopefully you could be thinking beyond that as well, and thinking this can be very useful for my practice. Perhaps you're not thinking about your practice right now, but certainly you should be thinking about study, about education. The thing is that we are Buddhists, and therefore our practice is something that is always very important to us. So that second consideration is about, you know, this can be beneficial to my practice, is something that you should cultivate. The thing is that Lorig is the one subject that, in a sense, we only study Lorig from beginning to end, okay? And this is the one subject that is beneficial no matter which class or which level you're at. From the very beginning, when you start with Dura, the colors, the white and red and so forth, all the way to the end, when you have your final examination, all you are studying is awareness, consciousness, cognition. It's all of this. Even when you look at the tantric grounds and paths, it will be of extreme benefit, incredible benefit, if you have a good understanding of Lorig. Now, when we talk about Tantra, for the Tantra, we have to receive initiation. And when you go into the initiation, the Lama is giving you instruction who says, visualize this, visualize that. And you have to be aware, like, how am I visualizing? What is producing the visualization? How am I supporting? How am I developing this visualization? It all comes from consciousness, from awareness, isn't it? It's all Lorig from beginning to end, all right? So I guess I was saying, definitely I'm teaching here with the hope that this can be of benefit, even if I do not benefit each and every person who attends here, even if there is benefit for one or two people, that will be sufficient. So Geshe was saying, you know, we're not omniscient. I'm not omniscient. Of course, we aspire to bring about the benefit of all sentient beings, but we don't have this capacity, the full capacity. Our capacity is very limited. It's like the little water, the amount of water that gathers in the hoof print of an ox, isn't it? So it's like this. But even if one or two people benefit from this class, so be it. Okay, so we have started last week with looking at the sevenfold classification of awareness. And the first category that we are looking is direct perceivers. We have said that there are four types of direct perceivers. The first one is sense direct perceiver. And we also talked about sense awareness, isn't it? Then we talk about mental direct perceiver, and we talked about mental awareness. Then we have the self-knowing direct perceiver and the yogic direct perceiver. So we have these four. In the beginning, it's very important to understand what are the differences between basically the first two. We have sense direct perceiver and sense awareness, and we have mental direct perceiver and mental awareness. So we really want to differentiate those. We need to make those concepts, as clear as possible. Now, we said that a sense direct perceiver is something that is produced, is generated from its uncommon, empowering condition, which is a sense power. And we know that we have 5 types of sense power. So in dependence upon those 5 types of sense power, we will also generate the 5 types of sense awareness, okay? If the uncommon empowering condition is mental power, then we will generate a mental direct perceiver, and we will talk about mental awareness. Okay, we will go through this material in detail to clarify. All right, so let's make it very clear. We are dealing with sense direct perceiver and mental direct perceiver. How do we differentiate them? How do we classify them? We look at the uncommon empowering condition. If the uncommon empowering condition is sense power, then it has to be a sense direct perceiver. If the uncommon direct condition is mental power, then it has to be a mental direct perceiver. So that should be clear. It's determined from the point of view of this uncommon empowering condition. Yep. Okay. All right. Sorry. What I made a mistake. I need to correct. So previously, just before, the previous block of speech was not about direct perceivers. It was about consciousness, mental consciousness or sense consciousness. So the differentiation is done only from the point of view of the uncommon empowering condition. Okay. Now, we want to see, we have talked about sense consciousness, but also we talk about sense direct perceiver. Okay, what is the difference between these two, between consciousness and the direct perceiver? When you start talking about the direct perceiver, you have to bring in parts of the definition. And the main characteristics we want to hold into mind in terms of the direct perceiver is that it is free from conceptuality, it is a knower, and it is unmistaken. So here, the differentiating element is the unmistaken. A direct perceiver has to be unmistaken. Okay, so what you see, we have sense consciousness. How do we know it is sense consciousness? We look at the uncommon empowering condition. It is one of the senses, isn't it? The sense power. In this case, we say, okay, it's classified as sense consciousness or sense awareness. Fine. How do we make the distinction between sense consciousness and sense direct perceiver? Sense direct perceiver, not only we have to look at the uncommon empowering condition that has to be one of the senses, also it has to be unmistaken. So it has the additional element of being unmistaken. And in this way, we can make the distinction because we say whatever is sense awareness, it doesn't necessarily have to be sense direct perception. And when we say this, it means that we allow for the cases of mistaken awareness in the group of sense awareness, whilst the sense direct perceiver has to be unmistaken. All right, so we have looked at the sense consciousness, we have looked at the sense direct perceiver, and let's look now at the sense direct perceiver apprehending form. So you see, as the name is getting longer, we need some additional elements to look at. So we're talking here about a sense direct perceiver apprehending form. Okay, So because it is a sense, it's obviously sense awareness, it must have its unique empowering condition, which is a sense power, isn't it? Because it is a direct perceiver, it has to be unmistaken. But it's not just any sense direct perceiver, it is sense direct perceiver apprehending form. So here the additional element is the observed condition. Observed, like focal object and observed condition is not exactly the same. So here we're talking about the observed object condition, observed condition. So what is it observing? It is observing form, okay? So you can see here that the more we add some crucial elements, the more we refine or the more we narrow down what we are talking about. When we did Dura, we talked about the shapes of the different sense powers. And we had said, this is the shape for the eye sense power. This is the shape for the ear sense power, for the nose, for the tongue, for the physical sense power, and so forth, isn't it? So although we are talking about sense power, you have to be aware that there are 5 of them. So we need to differentiate them. So when we talk here about eye sense power, okay, what is eye sense power? It is one of the sense powers. So it's going to have an uncommon condition, empowering condition. And that uncommon empowering condition is not just like some sense power, it is the eye sense power. So it is specific. Because it is direct perceiver, it has to be unmistaken. And because it is apprehending form, it means that it is a focal object. The observed focal object is form. And then we substitute for the sound, for the odors, for the taste, and the tactile object. All right, so let's be more specific here. We are talking about the sense direct perceiver that is apprehending form. And we say that it must have a focal object, and that focal object must be form. Okay, so what type of form is this? Because actually we have to be aware that there are many different types of form. So here, that form that is the unique focal observed object is the form from among the classification of 5 into the form, the sound, the tastes, the odors, and tactile objects. And this form is called actually the source. Why is it called the source? Because it is, this form is the source that acts as the observed conditions that allows the sense direct perceiver apprehending form to generate the eye awareness. So it becomes the source for generating this type of direct perceiver and awareness. Remember when we were doing Dura, we gave those diagrams, the diagram, and we said, you have all those things, and we have a 3-fold classification. We said the first one is form, the second one was awareness, the third one was non-associated compositional factors. When we did this classification, the first category, which was form, this is not the form we're talking about, because in that first category of form, we also included the sense powers. Remember, we explained the sense powers are like subtle form and so forth. So in there, you have, for example, the ear sense power holding sound, apprehending sound, isn't it? So if you take the observed focal object of eye or not the eye, of the sense direct perceiver apprehending form to have that general form as its object, you will end up in there having the ear sense power as becoming this object, which is not the case, because the ear sense power will only be generated by focusing on sound. Sound is its specific observed object. So that means that when we say that the observed focal condition is form, you should only be looking at the colors and the shapes. So it's a smaller group of forms. We said, we have about 12 colors and we have 8 types of shape. So don't look into form in general. Only this specific type of form can be the observed focal condition for direct sense perceiver apprehending form. Only colors and shapes. So if you are reading the definition, we gave it last week, of sense direct perceiver apprehending form, we said that part of the definition would be almost like the copy and paste, but there will be new elements in this, because we say, because it's a direct perceiver, part of the definition should be non-mistaken knower that is free from conceptuality. All right, up to here, it's there's no surprises. But then we say it is produced from its own uncommon empowering condition, that is eye sense power, and an observed object condition, which is a form. And then after that definition, in the text, it says, apply the same definition to the others as well. So the important things are the new things in the definition that say that you have here an uncommon empowering condition, and also you have an uncommon observed object condition. If it is apprehending form, it has to be eye sense power, and the observed object condition has to be form. If you move into the next definition, which will be sense direct perceiver apprehending sound, the first part of the definition, non-mistaken, knower, free from conceptuality, remains the same. But then when you start saying produced from its own uncommon empowering condition, now you have to change the uncommon empowering condition. It cannot be the eye sense power. It has to be the ear sense power and an observed object condition. It cannot be the form. It has to be the sound. So like this, in each definition, we have to change. You have to update the uncommon empowering condition and the uncommon observed object condition. Okay, so we talked about the sense direct perceiver apprehending form, and we say that it's uncommon observed object condition is form. We explained before that there is a particular range of form. It doesn't mean any form. It's we want to contain what type of form. And basically we said it is colors and shapes. So Geshe was saying, I don't want you in your mind to think that it is something very limited. Actually, it's not limited. Okay, we said we have the uncommon observed focal conditions has to be either color or shape. So let's start with the colors. We have 4 root colors, and then we have 8 secondary colors. But actually, we know that we have countless, thousands secondary colors. For each one of them, all you have to do is to specify or update the observed object condition, right? And you have a new one, because you have sense direct perceiver that is apprehending the color red, okay, which is different from the sense direct perceiver that is apprehending the color white. which is different from the sense direct perceiver that is apprehending the color blue or the color yellow. So go into the very end of that definition at that uncommon observed object condition, and instead of saying form, you put there the name of the color that it apprehends. So you can run with the 4 root colors with the countless secondary colors. And once you finish with the colors, go over to the shapes. So we had the tall, the short, the long, the square, the round, we had all those different shapes, okay? So if you go in that last part of the definition, the observed object condition, and specify this, then you're specifying what type of sense power direct perceiver apprehending what color or what form you have. Geshe says, I'm doing this because I don't want you to think it is a limited category. It's actually, let's look at the next one, which is sense direct perceiver apprehending sound. So when you hear that, of course, you understand that the observed object condition is a sound. And now, again, you might be thinking that this is a limited group. It doesn't include many things, but this is wrong, actually. In Dura, just as we saw the classification of colors into many different colors, and then we have the shapes on top of that, and so forth, similarly, there are many classifications for sound. So, for example, the most obvious classification, melodious or non-melodious sound, like pleasant and unpleasant sound. So this is something that we encounter all the time. In the text, of course, you will find other categories of sound, conjoined to the continuum, not conjoined to the continuum, but we haven't studied this. Okay, so let's just run with pleasant and unpleasant sounds. But also you can think of many other sounds. So for example, the sound of the human language, the sound of a dog, the barking of the dog, that's the dog language, isn't it? The sound of a cow, that's the cow language. And then when you say, for example, the sound of the human language, every country has its own language. So suddenly you have many languages. And then in each country, not only do you have the language, you have the dialect as well. So if you go into the last part of the definition, where you have this observed object condition, and not just say sound, but specify what sound, the sound of this particular the particular language of that particular place, and so on and so forth. So then you can see you can have so many included here. And similarly, we move to the next one, which is a sense direct perceiver apprehending smells. It's very good to use the plural here, not smell, but smells. Because if you go down to the observed object condition, if you are aware of how many different types and categories of smells are there, the more you understand of the object that is the observed object condition, the more of those sense direct perceivers you will be able to enumerate. So in terms of smells, we have nice smells, pleasant smells, unpleasant smells, sweet smells, burnt smell of a flower, perfume smell, this, that, and the other. There are many different smells. So the more smells that you know, the more direct perceivers apprehending smells you will be able to enumerate. If you only know one smell, you will only think that there is only one sense direct perceiver apprehending smell. Okay, so we can move to the next one, which is the sense direct perceiver apprehending tastes. So again, here, if you can understand that there are many different tastes, it means you will be able to enumerate or to comprehend that, again, this is a big category of direct perceivers. So as you can understand, every type of food has its own taste. So obviously there are many tastes, and in every country in the world, there are special dishes, isn't it? Special ingredients, special dishes, different food, 100 different dishes you could find in every country. So again, there are many different types of tastes, and therefore there are many different types of sense direct perceivers apprehending tastes. Now, when we look at the different types of tastes, again, the texts give us like a standard list, but by all means, this is not an exhaustive list. So the text say we have tastes that are sweet, sour, bitter, astringent, salty, and hot. So I think the sweet and the sour we understand, also the bitter we understand. There's a difference between the salty and the spicy. Salty indicates that we have used a lot of salt, like the salt, the substance that we get from the ocean, the water from the ocean. The water evaporates and you're left with the salt crystals, right? And then we have the hot or the spicy. Here, this indicates the heat that comes from ingredients such as, for example, chili. Now, traditionally in Tibetan medicine, there are three medicines, three substances. They're considered to be medicine, and they give heat. So they are, if you have this in your food, the taste will be hot, and so forth. Okay. So, as we say, this is just an indication of some basic categories of tastes. But as we know with food, we have many variations and combinations of all those basic tastes. It's not difficult to enumerate many tastes, but what is very difficult is to decide 100% decisively that this is tasty or this is sweet for everyone. You could have an orange and offer it to someone who really likes oranges. The person will say, oh, this is very nice. I like it. I like the taste. Okay, so this is a very pleasant taste. If you give the orange to someone who doesn't like oranges, they will not agree that this is a nice taste. And the same goes for every region of the country and every country. In different places, different people consider something to be tasty, to be a delicacy. And in the next place, they don't consider it to be tasty at all. We do not have a universal criteria, and we cannot say, this this judgment about taste is not valid or this one is valid. It doesn't work like this. You just have to understand that there will be variation amongst people and amongst countries and places. All right. Okay, so we come to the next one, which is the sense direct perceiver apprehending tactile objects. Again, do not think that this is a small category. We have a lot of tactile objects. First of all, we have tactile objects that are the elements, and these are the four types of elements, earth, water, fire, and wind. And then we have tactile objects that are derived from elements. And here we include things such as, for example, the soft and the coarse, the light and the heavy, hunger, thirst, and so forth. So there are many different types of, what are we saying here? Tactile objects that you can specify there in the observed object condition. Okay, one thing that we want to say here, we have already mentioned it, but we want to clarify this. The object and the observed object condition are two different things. The observed object condition is that which is observed here when we talk. It is relevant when we talk about the direct perceivers, the sense powers, and so forth, right? But when we talk about the object is different. So, for example, we say that when we cultivate great compassion, what is the object that we focus upon? The object is all sentient beings. So, in the case of great compassion, as it is with any other conceptual mind and this type of realization, there is no observed object condition, but there is an object. Okay, so that's the difference. Anyway, we will discuss this later on. So just to make the difference between object and observed object condition, these two things are not the same. Okay, we have been talking about sense direct perceivers. So we talked about the sense direct perceiver apprehending form, sense direct perceiver apprehending the sound, apprehending odors, apprehending taste, apprehending tactile objects. And we said that part of the definition, more or less, we have three parts of the definition. The first one is the copy and paste. The second one is talking about the uncommon empowering condition. And the last one, which is very important, is the observed object condition, which we change in each case. If we go into the definition of the mental direct perceiver, we say the first part of the definition is the same. So it has to be non-mistaken, it has to be a knower, it has to be free from conceptuality. And then we say it arises from its own uncommon empowering condition, which is mental sense power. And this is the end of the definition. So there is no third part or whatever last part talking about an observed object condition, because we say that whatever is conceptual mind, anyway, this is something that we will explain again later, does not actually have the observed object condition. Okay. In order for something to be an observed object condition, it must fulfill three criteria. It must be the appearing object for this type of consciousness. It must be the direct cause for this, or definitive direct cause for this consciousness. And it must be manifest. And it must be something that the mind has to meet, which means it has to be nearby. So if it is nearby and there is no obstruction, awareness will meet this object, and by meeting this object, or the sense power will be generated, isn't it? So let's go back to look at the example of the sense direct perceiver apprehending form. We said that the observed object condition is form. So what happens with form? Form actually appears to it. So it becomes the appearing object. And form also, this mind actually comes in contact with form, because there is nothing obstructing, like you can see that form, and the form is nearby, is not far away. Okay, so it is also the direct cause that gives rise, because it arises independence on that, and therefore it fulfills these three criteria. And this is why we say form is the observed object condition for this particular type of direct sense awareness, apprehending form. Okay, so we said that for conceptual minds, we do not have an observed object condition. So let's give an example here of a conceptual mind. You're sitting here thinking about your birthplace. You think about your birthplace, and your birthplace could be in another country, far, far, far away. Okay, so you can see that the birthplace is not actually the observed object condition. Why? Because it does not fulfill one of the three criteria. More specifically, it does not fulfill the third criterion, because the third criterion is a particular object that if it is nearby, you can generate this awareness, but if it is far away, you cannot generate this awareness. But here, in the case of remembering your birthplace is generated, the concept of this is generated in the mind, and it doesn't matter how near or how far that place is. And therefore, it is not conception, you see, does not need to have an observed object condition. Another thing, another example we can give here is the omniscience existing in the mind of an Arya Buddha. So omniscience is the awareness of the Buddha that comprehends all objects. So here with the omniscience of the Buddha, it actually doesn't need to rely on any observed object condition. It's not the case that the Buddha will know an object if the object is nearby, but the Buddha will not know the object if the object is a little bit further away. And Geshe was saying, from our side, often we behave in a way that is like we are trying to fool the Buddha. It's like if we say a lie, or if we do something improper, if we hide it, like if we keep the voice low, it's as if the Buddha will not hear because he's far away, he doesn't know we are lying. So this is not the case, isn't it? And this shows you that this omniscient awareness of the Buddha does not have an observed object condition. Okay, so Geshe is saying, I hope that it became a little bit clearer what is this observed object condition. If it fulfills these three criteria, then you can posit it as an observed object condition. And you can see that with the sense direct powers, those that apprehend form, apprehend sound, apprehend odors, apprehend taste, apprehend tactile objects, they all need to have observed object conditions. Now, observed object condition is not just forms, because they can be sounds, they can be tastes, they can be odors, they can be tactile objects, and so forth. As you can see with those definitions, the texts also say apply that pattern to the next definition as well. And this is one way for us to study and to apprehend sort of like similar things, that up to a point we can apply similarities, up to a point we just apply the definition and we just update the last part of the definition, isn't it? Otherwise, we would have to sit here and identify the observed object condition and give the definition for each one of those objects, which will be endless and repetitive. There is a saying in Tibetan, there is one of those herbivores that is eating one blade of grass at the time. So we are not going to do study like this, one blade of grass at the time, all right? We're going to understand what is similar and just do it together, apply to that which is similar. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right, so today we talked about sense consciousness, then we talked about sense direct perceiver, and then we talk about sense direct perceiver apprehending form, sense direct perceiver apprehending sound, sense direct perceiver apprehending odors, sense direct perceiver apprehending tastes, and sense direct perceivers apprehending tactile objects. Are you clear about that, or did you comprehend that? How is it? All right, okay, so if you said yes to this question, it means you understand it. Okay, so if we look at the definition of sense direct perceiver apprehending forms, how many parts do we have in this definition? Actually, there are three parts in this definition. We have In Tibetan, you enumerate it from the bottom up. In English, we make the phrase in a different way. So for us, the first part of the definition is the copy and paste that says it's non-mistaken, nowhere, free from conceptuality. This is something that we have already explained. We explained it last week in great detail when we explained what is a direct perceiver. We don't need to repeat it every time because this takes time. Okay, first part of the definition is the copy and paste. Second part of the definition is the part that says that it is produced from its own uncommon empowering condition. So the uncommon empowering condition that we have to specify, since it is form, it has to be I sense power, and the observed object condition, which is the third part of the definition, in this case has to be a form. So it has three parts in the definition, isn't it? So in this class, really, we spent some time explaining the sense-direct perceiver apprehending form. But by doing this, we also did the ones apprehending sounds, apprehending odors, apprehending taste, apprehending tactile objects. It's Geshe says, I don't think there's much point trying to give too much information in every class. It's better to proceed slowly and be much more thorough in this understanding. We have a group of 5 here, 5 types of sense-direct perceivers. If you understand the first one, direct perceiver, sense-direct perceiver apprehending form, you can apply that understanding to the remaining 4 in the list. So if we only spend, let's say, the majority of this class to explain the first one, the one that apprehends form, that is like a really good investment in terms of time. Then for the other ones, all you have to do is just change, update the words for the uncommon empowering condition and the word for the observed object condition, isn't it? Geshe says if we do it another way, and I just keep bombarding you with a lot of new information, for sure there will be some people in the audience that have that mental capacity to take it all in. But there are other people in the audience who will find it very difficult. And if you cannot assimilate the information from each class, then, it's going, in a sense, it's going to waste, you're left behind and all this. So the other thing that we clarified today is the difference between sense consciousness, then sense direct perceiver, and sense direct perceiver apprehending form. Okay, so for the first one, sense consciousness or sense awareness, the definition is that it is a type of knower that is free from conceptuality and is produced from its own uncommon empowering condition. Okay, for the second one, which is the sense direct perceiver, we have to put more things. Not only it is free from conceptuality, but it has to be non-mistaken, and it has to be produced from its own uncommon empowering condition. And then when we start subdividing them and we say we have sense direct perceiver apprehending form, we have to say not only is it free from conceptuality, not only it is unmistaken, not only it is produced from its own uncommon empowering condition, which now we have to specify that it is I sense power, but we have to include the observed object condition, that is form. So if you understand the distinction between those 3, if you understand the third one, the one apprehending form, then you can apply the similar information and just update it a little bit to understand the one apprehending sounds, apprehending odors, tastes, and tactile objects. What's the observed object condition? If it is apprehending form, tell us. I didn't hear, but I see Geshe nodding.
거기 shape and color 이 샤고
Okay, shape and color. All right, okay. Okay, in general, your answer is fine. Okay, we accept that. But okay, just to be specific here, listen to the question. What is the observed focal condition for the sense direct perceiver apprehending form? Actually, I have given you the answer because I said it's something, something, something apprehending form. So all you have to say is form. Form. It's apprehending form, okay? Because then if you start specifying and saying it is shape, this is a subcategory of form. If you say apprehending color, it's a subcategory of that. Subcategory in the sense that you are now becoming more and more and more specific. But the general question is like the observed condition of this and this and this apprehending form. So just say form. So, for example, if I start giving you the definition and I say, the non-mistaken knower who is free from conceptuality, produced from its own uncommon empowering condition, I sense power, and the observed object condition, a color. So you see here, I'm actually giving you the definition of something more specific. Okay, I'm giving you the definition of the direct sense perceiver apprehending color. Of course, the one that is apprehending color is apprehending form, but because the question was, what is the observed object condition of the one apprehending form? And apprehending form is a more general category. Then you just stick with that answer, the general answer. The similar thing with the sounds. If you're asked this question, what is the observed object condition of direct sense perceiver apprehending sound? You just have to say sound. You don't have to give me a specific example of sound. When we give the specific examples, it's there to indicate that, look, this is a big category. You have a lot of things included here. So remember when we were doing Dura that we were calculating the differences and we were saying there are 3 possibilities, 4 possibilities, how many possibilities, right? To understand the difference between things. So if you understood how to do this, you should be able to understand what is the difference between the direct sense perceiver apprehending form and direct sense perceiver apprehending color. Not exactly the same, are they? Okay, we don't want to spend too much time. There are actually 3 possibilities. If it is sense direct perceiver apprehending form, it is not pervasive, meaning it is not necessary. That is a sense direct perceiver apprehending color. But if it is sense direct perceiver apprehending color, it is necessary, pervasive, that it is sense direct perceiver apprehending form. Okay, so you see, we have pervasion going one way, but not the other way. So give me an example where we are not having pervasion. Because we say if it is sense direct perceiver apprehending form, it's not pervasive, but it is apprehending color. Okay, give me an example. So we have 8 types of shape. You could say sense direct perceiver that is apprehending a square shape. Because in this case, because we have this specific observed object condition, it makes it a sense direct perceiver apprehending form, but it's not apprehending color, is it? Okay, did you understand? Okay, so for the sense direct perceiver apprehending form, what is the uncommon empowering condition? Not in general, the empowering condition, uncommon empowering condition, if you're apprehending form. Okay, since it is a direct sense perceiver that is apprehending form, how is it seeing the form? Well, it has to be the eyes, right? So the uncommon empowering condition is I sense power. So we are talking here about eye awareness and whether or not eye awareness will be able to clearly see the object. That really depends on whether or not the ball of the eye and the eye sense power are free of any faults. If there is some condition, if the eye sense power is damaged, or if the ball of the eye is damaged, then eye sense, the eye awareness will not be able to clearly see the object. When your eye awareness cannot see clearly, it's not because of some limitation of awareness, eye awareness. Eye awareness is awareness. Awareness is something which is very subtle and it doesn't have physical limitations. However, the ball of the eye and the eye sense power, they might have some fault. Often they have fault. And depending on the condition of these two, because these two are physical parts, depending on the condition of these two, then it will be determined how clearly we can see the objects or not. So it is similar to having a mirror here and having the object reflected to the mirror. So remember, the eye awareness will see the object when the object is reflected upon the eye sense power and, the ball of the eye. So it really depends on these parts in order to see it. If there is any fault, the fault is here, not in the awareness. Okay, when we have sense direct perceiver apprehending sound, what is the observed object condition? Okay, good. And what is the uncommon empowering condition for sense direct perceiver apprehending sound? Did it say ear sense power? Yes, I didn't hear you. Yes, all right, great. Great, all right, so what is the kind of like shape of this ear sense power? Maybe some will remember it. All right, okay, very good. Everybody has an answer. What is the observed object condition for sense direct perception, apprehending smells? It's uncommon empowering condition. And what is the shape? The chopsticks. Right? The chopsticks. So something that goes up. Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah. What is the observed object condition for sense direct perceiver apprehending taste? Okay, and what is its uncommon empowering condition? It's the tongue sense power, isn't it? And what is the shape? Okay, all right. Someone said, yeah. Very good. What's the observed object condition for sense direct perceiver apprehending tactile object? It's the tactile object, right? And what is the uncommon empowering condition? Okay, so body sense power. And Geshe says, what example did I give you for that? So Geshe said, I gave you the example. It's almost like it's a very, very fine skin that covers the entire body. So Geshe is saying, from this, with this, you have understood 2 out of the 3 parts of the definition. And as for the third part of the definition, by now it should be rolling off your tongue because it's the one that we have to use all the time for any direct perceiver. It has to be non-mistaken, knower, free from conceptuality. So we have explained the free from conceptuality. We have to explain the non-mistaken part. So the non-mistaken part, actually, to define this, we have to look at different types of mistakes or errors that can happen. Geshe says, I would like to stop here today because if I give you that as well, it will be too much information for one class. So we will stop here.